Morning, everybody. I am glad to see you and happy to share my thoughts this week. Um, I was looking at the Torah portion, Bechalotecha, and right now I think that there are uh, different synagogues are reading different um, portions, and that has to do with whether or not you celebrate 1 day or 2 days of Shavuot. And so I don't know where you are in your Torah reading, but I'm at Bechalotecha. Um, and this is a parsha in Numbers that's really I thought was kind of complex in that when I read it this year, different things stood out for me than in prior years. So just very briefly, the Parsha begins with rules for the Levites and around Passover, and it ends with Israelites yet again complaining about not good food. And also the story that you may recall of Miriam and Aaron engaging in some Lashon Hora and sort of talking poorly about their brother Moses and um, and the outcome of that. What grabbed my attention, however, this year is the middle portion of the Parsha, which is really all about wandering in the wilderness and this amazing cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And that's where we're going to spend our time. Before we do that, though, we're going to spend a little time settling. So let's sit in our seats comfortably. Let's take a couple of breaths, inhaling and exhaling. And you may recall that last week we really spent a lot of time talking about breath. Just remembering that as we extend the length of our exhale, we're engaging that vagus nerve and really can help ourselves calm down. It's a nice way to settle. So you may individually want to count to yourself and inhale to the count of 3 or 4, and then exhale to the count of 6 or 8. Just see how that is for you. And breathing in, I calm my body. And breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in this present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. This particular moment. And we can all kind of congratulate ourselves for taking this time. So, Bechalotecha. As I mentioned, the middle portion of this parsha is filled with many repetitions about the importance of this cloud that is hovering over or around, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, the tabernacle. And the cloud is the sign of when the encampment of the Israelites, as they're leaving Sinai, is supposed to move and where they're supposed to move. So the cloud leads the way. I am going to read from the Sefaria interpretation of the Parsha, just so that you get a flavor of what grabbed my attention. And this all occurs between chapter 9, verse 15, and the end of that chapter, which is 23, verse 23, and then a couple of lines in chapter 10. On the day that the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the pact. And in the evening it rested over the tabernacle in the likeness of fire until morning. It was always so. The cloud covered it, appearing as fire by night. And whenever the cloud lifted from the tent, the Israelites would set out accordingly. And at the spot where the cloud settled, there the Israelites would make camp. At God's command, the Israelites broke camp, and at God's command, they made camp. They remained encamped as long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle. When the cloud lingered over the tabernacle many days, the Israelites observed God's mandate and did not journey on. At such times as the cloud rested over the tabernacle, but for a few days, they remained encamped at God's command and broke camp at God's command. And at such times as the cloud stayed from evening until morning, they broke camp as soon as the cloud lifted in the morning. Day or night, whenever the cloud lifted, they would break camp. Whether it was 2 days or a month or a year, however long the cloud lingered over the tabernacle, the Israelites remained encamped and did not set out. And when it lifted, they did break camp. On a sign from God, they made camp, and on a sign from God, they broke camp. They observed God's mandate at God's bidding through Moses. In the second year, on the 20th day of the second month, the cloud lifted from the tabernacle of the pact, and the Israelites set out on their journeys from the wilderness to Sinai. The cloud came to rest in the wilderness of Paran, and God's cloud kept above them by day as they moved on from the camp. Whew, it's a lot. So what really stands out for me is that there was this incredible lack of predictability. They never knew how long the cloud would rest in a particular place, and they didn't know when it would be time to suddenly move, and it would happen pretty quickly. The lack of predictability feels really current to me right now. And so it brought up a whole lot of thoughts and feelings. You know, wandering um, as the Israelites did in what appeared to be a really random and circuitous route. And I suspect many of you have seen maps that show the dotted route that the Israelites took through the desert. And they kept turning back on themselves and stopping at the same place multiple times. And they were doing this for 40 years. And that um, reminds me of what wandering is like for us. So we, I think, wander when we're going from one place to another without a clear path. It could be physical wandering as the Israelites were doing. But we live with the metaphors from the Torah. So I think maybe this wandering is really about our internal wandering. The whole growth process, both personal growth and spiritual growth, is not a straight line. It's an iterative process. We do something, then we circle back and kind of revisit it and grow from it and see what we learn, and then circle back. And so it's like a spiral going up. So that's really the piece of this that caught my attention. I was reading Rabbi Lisa Goldstein's commentary on this parsha, and she wrote, "We all have moments of deep suffering, symbolized by Egypt. We also have joyful and settled experiences of feeling at home in the world, symbolized by the land of Israel. But much of our lives are in that in-between space, the growing, the seeking, the trying, the failing, the getting up once again, symbolizing the wilderness." So I thought that was really lovely. We are so used to thinking of Egypt as Mitzrayim, the constricted, difficult place. And maybe many of you think of Israel as home, as a place of safety, at least metaphorically. I'm not talking politically. And the wilderness is really that journey, that external or internal journey. So I thought that all of that was very relevant to us. And in her commentary, Lisa shared a number of midrashim, but one of them is about that there are several clouds, so that the entire encampment is encircled by clouds, including clouds on top of the encampment, and that this was seen as a protective kind of invisible coat. And definitely the clouds were seen as a symbol of divine love and care. So even though the wanderings appeared to be random, and as I said, they circled back on themselves where they had been, they were not random because the cloud, God's love and protection, is leading. And I just think that's such an interesting way of looking at all of this, as the clouds as God's protection and love. So all of this also had me thinking about transitions in life. The transitions are part of the journey. That's part of the wilderness. And when we are in transition, be it a transition because we're changing jobs or moving into retirement or physically moving from one home to another home, or any number of other transitions I could think of off the top of my head, like graduating from college or starting a family or burying people that we love. All of these are major, major transitions. And so often it's human nature to rush through the transition rather than spending the time resting in the uncertainty of not knowing how things are going to turn out. And living with that sense of vulnerability is really, really hard. And that's kind of what got elevated for me in this Parsha. The people are in a time of great transition. The Israelites are leaving Sinai. They've just received the Torah, the Ten Commandments and the Torah, and they are going to the promised land. Well, what is that? So that not knowing can be really scary. So, of course, by the end of the Parsha, they're complaining and fetching because their anxiety is heightened. So, we need to think in terms of personally and metaphorically, how is this for us as we go through life's transitions. Lisa ended her um, commentary with something that I think is important and worth sharing. So I am going to read this as we prepare for our silent time. And this is again from Lisa Goldstein. We go through periods of what psychologist Dr. Stephen Sandage calls spiritual dwelling, where we feel grounded and connected, and spiritual seeking, where we are questioning and exploring. We cannot predict when the ease of dwelling will be interrupted by the call to get up and move, to explore new territory, perhaps to encounter new difficulties. That experience can be frustrating and scary. But we, like the Israelites, have a resource, the image of the clouds of divine love. The clouds remind us that, as Maimonides says, we are not in fact lost, even if it looks that way from the outside. The journey may be irregular, it may involve doubling back several times, but all of it comes at the urging of the life force. And where do we find the life force? The Torah tells us that the divine cloud of protection rested on the newly built tabernacle. As we have seen, the tabernacle was built so I may dwell within them. The tabernacle reminds us to look inside. As we navigate our own journeys of growth, there are times when we move and change, and times when we feel more encamped or even stuck. But no matter what, we are invited to cultivate our capacity for trust that the divine life force is indeed within us and guiding us. So as we move now into our sit, I invite you to adjust your seat so that you are sitting squarely on your sits bones. And as we talked about last week, we really want to be um, as erect as possible. So we're focusing on our pelvis and our torso right on top of the pelvis like children's building blocks. And our spine erect and our head squarely on top of the spine. And with our head, we're reaching up to the heavens. So our spine can be like Jacob's ladder, rooted in the ground and reaching all the way up. And we breathe. I encourage you to take a few nice, deep cleansing breaths. And I remind you that being in an erect position does not mean being rigid or stiff. With each breath, there are micro movements in your body. Don't try to squelch them. We need the freedom to move. And with that movement, maybe we can feel that life force within us, helping guide us on our own individual, personal, internal journeys. and we'll sit for about 10 minutes. As you begin to deepen your breath and slowly bring your attention outward, I'm going to share a poem by Donna Faulds entitled Walk Slowly. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still, and just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe and be, and walk slowly into the mystery.